you are an experiencer. You've had contact, I guess, direct face-to-face contact with, we'll call it, the big term now is non-human intelligence, but we'll see about that. When did you first become aware that there was something different about you, that there was some other visitors in your life?
When I was a child, about like 5 or 6 years old. I have to say 5 or 6 because like whenever I say one specific number and then I change, number in another interview, randomly people say that I'm just like lying because I cannot point out a date. I'm not lying, it's just that I cannot remember the specific year or age that I was when it happened, right? But like I say around 5, 6 year old, I started to become aware that I was different. And it was like more of a feeling, I know like when I would go to sleep, I will always feel a presence and I will know that I was being visited, but I couldn't tell who it was or what it was. I just know that I was being visited, both by negative entities and positive entities. And so I remember that I will start telling my parents that I was not from this planet. And I will say things like, no, I come from a different planet. And they'll be like, no, what are you talking about? You were born from, my mother, you were in my womb, you came out of me. And I said, yeah, well, I teleported to your womb, mom. That's how I got here. So I was basically describing the idea of incarnation, you know, and I was very sure. I was like very confident about that statement. And obviously, like, I was very, very, very into like physics, metaphysics, and even spirituality. When I was more of like a 8 year old child, kind of like a little bit older, I remember that I will play with my friends and I will show them that I have psychic abilities. And to them, they will not criticize me because we were children, so we will play, and they will think it was like playing, but like they realized I did have abilities and they were like, oh, you have powers, and I was like, yes, we all have them. And you know that's it. I used to use my abilities when I was a young child.
That's interesting. I would say my first memories are all about space and aliens and watching rocket launches on TV. And it was so long ago. I mean, it was even black and white television and stuff. And I was about 5 or 6 also. I think that's when you sort of separate from where you came from the other, your where we all go when this is over, wherever that is, the higher dimension. And you start to like be grounded, and that's when your memories really start to come in. So that's interesting, an interesting time. Okay, so you're psychic. You were psychic. You were born this way. This is not something you developed after your contact experiences. Is that correct?
It is correct. But it's true that we are all born with certain potential or certain genetics, And when contact happens, sometimes that experience triggers those genetics to activate, further, you know, and expand. So yeah, it depends on your own personal trajectory. So yeah, some people develop this after they got contact, but not because they didn't have it before, but because it was dormant.
Okay. Boy, I really hope this gets to this recording. Okay, double checking it. Okay, so when you say psychic powers, what do you mean? Like the ability to predict the future? Would you look at someone and tell them you're going to get sick next week? Anything like that? What can you give me an example of an experience? It doesn't have to be the first one, just a really strong experience that you have that helped confirm.
Really, really strong experience. Well, I would go for the strongest. The strong experience psychic abilities that I have is weather manipulation. And this has to do with the Druids, the Druidic, the ancient Druids were pretty much connecting with the earth elements, and
Mhm.
working very hardly with, the earth magnetic field, and the real energy or chi or prana, however you want to call it, to actually manipulate the weather, and I did it, but like many times, with the help of my druidic, guides, and that's the strongest abilities that I ever presented. But really, I will say that that's the most shocking, because you actually change something's physical, right? But like for me, the most important one is channeling. I have the ability to channel knowledge, let's say, like metaphysical knowledge, for example.
So I want to ask you now, I want to get to your visitations. Have yours always been in like an altered state of consciousness, like a sleep state or some odd paralysis state, or have you had direct conscious contact with beings from other worlds or non-human intelligences or whatever you want to call it?
I do have both. Like, I have contact both in my dream state or in a altered state of consciousness, as you will put it, and also in a state in which I am conscious. Even though I'm not really like the brain waves that I'm emitting are not the same as to like a random day, of your life, which you're operating with the same dynamics, because like either I am in a state in which I have a very transcendental kind of thinking, so that gets me into deeper kind of like, let's say, awareness, myself and my reality, or because I'm meditating, and I'm in a actually like an almost kind of trance state, but still conscious. But yeah, like there has been days in my life in which I was like living a normal day and I was thinking things to myself and I got telepathic messages, from either ETs or guides, And when I will look it up, the things that they will tell me, they will make perfect total sense, to what I was thinking or what I was asking, because it was on a scientific matter, So, or it will happen next few hours or whatever. So yeah, I experience both. I experience, getting contact in sleep and also in a conscious state of mind, I would say.
Conscious state of mind, but not necessarily you're walking down the street and there's an alien standing there. Not that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Okay, because Willie's had a few weird experiences like that, or friends of his had, where they're at a bookstore or something, and there's aliens come in and flip through his book and start commenting on it. So okay, let's get to the visitations a little bit more. The first one is, how many different races or alien species have you seen, and how would you describe them? I mean, I know we all have the standard grays, but I don't know if you've contacted with them, but can you give me a few highlights in terms of the races you know?
Sure. I will say I will have to count with my fingers. Probably I've come across more species than I thought, because that's the experience for like literally anyone, that is active, in the field of contacting aliens, Um, so, but like the ones that I contacted consciously or that I remember, I will say it's obviously, firstly, we have the Greys, we have the Andromedans, the Reptilians, the Anunnaki, various races within the Anunnaki. Some were completely different, from one another. So some were more humanoid and some were more hybrid between reptilian and human. And some were positive and some were not. Draconians, reptilians, Arcturians, gray hybrids, Lyrans I've seen too, and Nordics, Pleiadians or Nordics, pretty much like a lot.
Let's go down the list and talk about each of these different species a little bit, what their characteristics are. I'm interested in, well, all of them. You said the Dracos, the Draconians, and the reptiles. Now, are they two different species, or are most of them from the Draco system?
They are different species because, like, there are some reptilians. I mean, obviously, all humanoids are gonna have like a common, origin, in the universe, and all reptiloids or reptilians are gonna have a common origin, and as well as amphibians, etc. But like, it's true that there are many different, like a vast of like many different races among the reptilians or the Dracos. The Dracos are obviously from Alpha Draconia. They are from that constellation, and they're much bigger than the average reptilians. They have like some of them even have wings, and a bigger like tail, and they have a very big body. They're very tall, like 6 feet tall or something. Like I don't know how much fits because I don't work with fits. I work with meters. I'm from Europe.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, but the reptilians tend to be more from Orion, and they're much smaller, So I
Are
do
they
see it.
are the reptiles, are they all universally negative entities, or are some of them positive?
No, that's not true. I mean, generally here on Earth, because of our specific, background, like historical background, etc., we do have like it's very common that our encounter with reptilians are negative, and not just because of our history, as to like our collective history and our own exopolitics, like issues with them in exopolitics, but also because we are mammals. So our reptilian brain, whenever they see something like some entity that is reptilian, there's a part of our reptilian brain that is going to get obviously triggered, if we haven't integrated within us the reptilian aspect, that they give it away to us in our genetics when we were created, as a species.
Hmm.
So, all those aspects or dynamics about like fight response, or attack, victim, etc. Like those polarities, it's gonna trigger us if we haven't integrated that, much within ourselves. But there are many positive or even neutral, reptilians out there.
All right, what about the grays? Let's talk about the basic grays. We have the basic 3 foot tall, big black eyes. How do you view them, and what's your experience with them?
My most hated species, because I had the worst experience with them. I don't like to judge, I'm a little bit of intergalactic racist, because I judge a lot, race. But I would like to
Well,
say that there are some that are completely, again, neutral or even positive, and they will never bother me, but the craze in general tend to be very agenda based, and they tend to be very manipulative, very manipulative, and they lie a lot. They're sneaky. They just want to get things,
right.
and
And it's okay to judge. It's okay to judge because look, the truth is, from my perspective, these races are weaker than us. They may have better technology, but they're weaker. They're here because they need something from us. They're not here for the water or the oil or the atmosphere or any of that other stuff. That can be had anywhere in the universe, all over this galaxy, all over the solar system. They're here for us, and they're here because they're weaker than us and they need something. I think the purpose of existence, consciousness itself, is to end this physical life closer to God than you were when you came here. That's what I believe we're here for. And I think the human path that we chose to get there as a species is free will. And they don't have free will. I think it's pretty obvious from people that have encountered them. I think they chose intellect. And I think their path is a dead end.
they're not to be trusted. And I actually had I did a like a Zoom chat, or interview with Liz Trevor, once, for YouTube. And I remember that we were talking about that. I was trying to convince him about, that he was being, he was in a state of like complete like rank, like I will say, yeah, like what the word that I mentioned before, like Stockholm syndrome, that he actually was too attached to those consciousness, and that those consciousnesses were actually lying to him, and even using like emotionally, very, very strong emotional manipulation,
Mhm.
with him on his end because of what he experienced, with the loss of her, his partner, So these beings are
Yeah.
not stupid, and they will go forward with the very, very like the deepest, fear of ours, or pain, within our emotional body. And I tried to make him know that he got emotional, and he started saying, well, if it was not because of them, I wouldn't have been able to contact my wife, And I was like, yeah, but because they give you something positive in your life doesn't mean that what they bring altogether is positive, in general. If I
Right.
wanted to manipulate somebody, I will not be like aggressive and abusive, out, all the way, I will get like I will get them something that I know that is going to be positive on their end, that they're going to appreciate, and be thankful for, so that they like me. And now is when I come with my own agenda and my own, interests, and I take action, So I try to make him understand that, but I think he's still, following that path. And I agree on that, narrative, the whole like you're the stranger planet, making us, the bad guys, and they the saviors, the beautiful heroes that care
Right.
so much about the Mother Earth and Gaia. No, it's manipulation, The Earth climate, the climate change, is changing, but not
The earth
because
is strong. The earth is
it
very
is.
strong, very
But
resilient.
the climate's changing, not because of pollution and stuff, CO2, like carbon footprint, but because there is a bullshit going on right now. It's always happened every 25,000 years. A pole shift happens, and there are weather changes, climate changes, but it's natural. It's not caused by CO2.
25,920 years to be exact. But yeah, it's a precessional cycle, and it actually has to do with the very large undiscovered planets out there that come in to certain alignments, which trigger the hyperdimensional physics and make the Earth try to get back into resonance with a system that's broken because there's two exploded planets in this solar system, at a minimum, two exploded planets. Anyway, all right, I want to move on to some of the other races. Unless you have any more you want to finish off there. When people talk about the Nordics and the Pleiadians, are we talking about the same species there?
Oh no, no, no. I mean, some Pleiadians are Nordics, and some Nordics are Pleiadians, but that doesn't have to be hand in hand necessarily.
Okay. And we also assume all Pleiadians are good. And you're saying you've had interactions with some, because that guy, you said that guy, the guy that came to you when you were 17 was Pleiadian,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So not all of them are good, right? They're just like people. They're just like human beings. There's some good ones and some bad ones, right?
Correct, yes. And there are many Anunnaki that are from Pleiades, the galaxy, and they're not positive oriented. So
okay, so let's go to the Anunnaki, who we generally regard through the work of Zecharia Sitchin, which I know he channeled most of it. He didn't actually read those Cylinder Seals guys. He actually channeled most of it. And by the way, he also has stated privately to people before he passed away that Enki is still alive and still on Earth and has changed his genetics to look like us. And he even told me who he was. And I was like, wow, that's pretty bizarre because there he is. But the Anunnaki are generally regarded to come from this planet Nibiru, which supposedly orbits around our solar system or through our solar system every 3,600 years. Personally, my research indicates that's not correct, that at best, it's like it maybe came through once, and maybe it comes through every so often, but it's only in the outer solar system. So, what do you know about the Anunnaki? And let's start with the more basic human-looking ones that look like giants. Tell us
the
about
Anunnaki is such a general word because it was created. It definitely means something because it's Anunnaki or something like that. Which basically means those who come from heaven.
right.
Down here, right? So it was definitely a way to name, like for humans, to name those who literally came from the space, the outer space,
Mm-hmm.
and landed, and to this planet and interacted with us. Or some say that it might refer to them as being fallen angel, genetic material, the Nephilim, etc. But that's like a lot of occult, history stuff. But like generally speaking, the Anunnaki are like a species of mainly humanoid consciousness, but not necessarily humanoid, and they have a very specific origin, but they took so many different genetic iterations in their own path of evolution, since like millennia of years ago, like time and eons of time, that we have a very big, majority of different like Anunnaki races or groups or families, even spiritual families or lineages, that are not the same, specific groups. So when you say Anunnaki here, firstly, most people think of like those who are like a mix in between reptilian and human or evil, but that's not true. There are many different kinds of Anunnakis right now. So it's a very general word, It's like saying human, for most
So,
part.
yeah, I tend to think of them as humanoid, like our genetic ancestors who were, in the Bible, they're giants. Well, when they came to Earth, let's say it was 400,000 or 500,000 years ago, there were Neanderthals. Neanderthals are like what, 5'3"? So if you were 6'5", if you were 6'5" or 6'7", which is a normal human height, right? For people that play basketball, anyway, that they would look like giants, or even if they were 6 feet tall, they would look like giants. You're saying Anunnaki is a reference more to generally different species visiting the Earth, not one specific humanoid species. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
so truly, there's a truth in which it's like a common factor within their genetics, meaning that they have like a common origin. That's why they share. That's why they collectivize, among each other, because they do have a like common origin, but because the there are many different groups, that to different paths, in evolution, in genetic iterations, in politically and etc. Spiritually, that we're talking about many different castes, many different families or races, altogether. But the thing about the giant thing, I do believe that there were some that were giant because I've seen them, in my contact experiences. Now, I do agree that that part about hybridization, like giant kind of like species with like very shorter, much shorter, species like mixing together doesn't make sense, it will kill, the mother, obviously. It will not make sense, or the baby. And
Mhm.
so I don't understand how that genetic iteration was made about like the human creation, let's say. But I believe that there was a lot of technology, involved, obviously, because otherwise it would not be possible. But not just regarding the height, but regarding, the compatibility, and also like many other species were part of, creating us. So I believe that it was not made in a way that we can understand to the day of today, scientifically speaking.
You see the long beards in a lot of the Sumerian cylinder seals and so forth. So you think that's I call it the ZZ Top phase of the Anunnaki visitation, right? Because there's an American band where the guys have beards like that. Is that who were hanging out in Mesopotamia,
Yes,
thousands of
in
years ago?
Mesopotamia and Sumeria, there was these Anunnaki, yes, Anunnaki beings that were definitely living their knowledge,
Capricorn,
their genetic. Yeah.
the ones from Capricorn. Okay, interesting. All right, so
Well, I don't know who exactly that they were, like the
the
ones
ones
that
that,
were in Mesopotamia, but I
yeah.
just I just said that I know I am in contact right now with two different Anunnakis, that are positive, that are my positive contacts.
So you consider the term Anunnaki to refer to like a group of extraterrestrials, not a specific race, right? Not a
Exactly.
specific.
Like a
Okay.
group of extraterrestrials, more like.
Yeah. So that's what the word probably means. Well, that would mean there was all kinds of visitors coming to Earth then in ancient times and probably doing and manipulating our genetics in different ways. Okay. I guess I want to talk to you about some of the other races that you mentioned. Alex Collier is a contactee who I generally like his information when he talks about the universe, his physical universe is made up of light and sound. That makes sense to me. I believe that's
Yeah.
correct because you're talking about interfering waves of light and sound. And the more sound gets into the light, the more the vibration slows down and the more solid it becomes. And that all makes sense to me. And terms of the hyperdimensional nature of the universe that we live in. So he talks about blue Andromedans. So why don't you tell us about the Andromedans that you know, and what do you think about Alex in general?
Well,
His info.
Alex Collier was like a main figure to me in my awakening when I was 15, 16 years old. Because like I was drawn to his information like intuitively all the way, when I was researching the whole thing about Anunnakis, positivity contact, I had a long list, when I was finally becoming aware of like the like more consciously as a teenager, of all these different positive groups, helping us. And among all the contactees that I saw on the list, the name Alice Collier from Andromeda resonated with me so much that I felt the need, to research him on YouTube. And the first video that I saw of him, it was a webinar that talk in which he talked about the pole shift, about the transition to for density and the higher frequencies coming to earth, and all these different terms. It was the first time in my life that I will hear them, well, the first time that I will hear them, frequency, vibration, like all of this, consciousness. And I was like, oh yeah, like my reaction was like, I forgot about this, but this is true, so it made sense to me, and I continue forward, with listening to him. And my impression right now is that his information is very interesting, but he personally, right now, like in the beginning, might not be what I think of him. I thought very positively of him, and I still do. But right now, as to like um from the perspective of where I am today and all the things that I lived, when I listen to him, I still feel like a little bit of a fear based, belief vibration within his
Yeah,
voice.
again, the whole thing of we're in orbit around the planet, and more in
Yeah,
air.
with the
The guy saying,
Nibiru, with the
"Oh,
Jaffa.
why don't you take care of your planet?" It's like we do take care of it. It's fine,
Exactly.
It's like give me a break. So I got some of that, but I did like his message in general. And gosh, I mean, I think the first thing I saw was like a seminar he did in like 1993 was the first time I came across him. And I, he seems like a good guy. But I
Yeah,
think,
he is.
again, I think he's been manipulated.
Yeah, there you go. The same thing. I do perceive the same thing that he's a good guy. He's trying to do his best thing, to help the world. But, and his message is altogether good, his information, I do really believe him, But like still I feel there's a little bit of fear-based, beliefs, within
Right.
his consciousness that he still cannot get like disattached from.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, if, look, here's the thing. If you base your whole shtick or whatever it is you are as a UFO person, on something specific. Like mine's based on the face on Mars. That's where I got started, right? I know it's artificial. I know somebody built it. Maybe we can ask you questions in the third segment about that. But if that were proven to be completely false, I'd have to be like, well, now now who am I, right? So the Andromedans that you've encountered are they blue skinned, or was that just one small species from Andromeda that he dealt with? Because he
Um,
talks about them as being blue skinned.
the very interesting thing about my contact with Andromedans is that I never seen them. Like whenever I will have contact with them, like in my dream state or astral state, they will not want to show themselves, like how they look like, and I never knew why. Like they will take into screens, of people that I know within my consciousness, and they will, take that suit, and they will look like my teacher or like my friends or like my
Right.
members, but they never wanted to show me how they look like, which I don't know why it would be, but
Well, and again, I've had rare encounters and are all in a sleep state, but I know that was really being visited. And three of them in my bedroom once, and they looked like grays, except their faces were like a flat screen, but it was almost like a kaleidoscope where you had part of a face and part of a face in three different segments. And they were trying to, well, we need you to help us. We need you to help us. We need you to get the word out. We can make you really famous and important and all this stuff. And
oh
and
yes.
and I said, yeah, of course. Well, I appealed to my ego, and I said, I don't. How can I trust you when you won't even show me your real faces? And they said back to me, that would just frighten you.
Oh.
So maybe that's why they aren't showing you their faces. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that the reason why they didn't want to show me their look is not because I will be necessarily scared or judgmental, but because that will interfere in the way that I will receive them, because at the beginning of my awakening, I based like everything was very superficial in terms of ET contact, and races. So I think they didn't wanted the focus to be on there, on how they look like, but rather on what their message was. I think that, I don't
Right.
know.
I understand the Arcturans. My take on the Arcturans is that they tend to drink a lot and they're very unreliable. That's sorry. It's a joke between me and my brother. What do you know about the Arcturans, the Lyrans, and can you fill us in a little bit on the Syrians in the next minute? Go.
Sure. The Arcturians are like one of the most wise, spiritually wise people, like very spiritually integrated, beings. So they will be like the ones that will be like very of trust, like you can trust them a lot. I haven't really seen Arcturians that are fucked up, just going.
Okay.
So I think that whenever you're like in the worst moment of your life, their Arcturians will be pretty much of help. But they're so like beyond what we expect to be like spiritually awakened that their content might be very very deep and wise. So you have to be on that level of receiving that kind of level of spirituality, like very deep. And also they're very bothered, that like they don't bother if you don't want to contact them, they will not bother if you want, they will contact you. But yeah, so again, the Arcturians are very wise, very spiritually deep. Some of them are not existing anymore at all um in a physical expression because they have evolved beyond past that. And they're very, yeah, they are very all about unconditional love, and they teach you a lot about all these things. And they can be great guides, but and they can be even very humorous. So I have nothing negative to say about them. I think they're one of the only ones that I don't have anything bad to say about them. So yeah, that's it. And the Syrians, well, the Syrians, I have not had like I didn't really have like a lot of experiences with them, to be honest, to be fair. It's true that I became aware at 17 that I was part of another hybrid program that was not with the Greys, and I think I saw some beings that resembled the Syrians, but I don't know if they were Syrians or not, so I cannot really
The
tell. Yeah, but
Syrians look like? What do they look like? Syrians.
depending, some of them are blue skinned, some of them are like very humanoid looking and like Nordic looking. It depends, because there are two stars in Sirius, so it depends, but I don't have a lot like strong contact with the Syrians. So
Okay.
I can say much about them.
What about the Lyrans? What do they look like, and what's their agenda?
The Lyrans, there are some that are very humanoid looking because humans, or humanoids originate from Lyra, the constellation of Lyra. So, Biga. So there are some that are very humanoid, and again, they're very wise, very, very spiritually deep, They have evolved, a lot, so they have a lot of very advanced technology, knowledge, and abilities. They're very psychic. They have a lot of psychic abilities, and there are some Lyrans that are feline looking. I Yeah, I've seen them in my dreams, but again, I didn't have like a strong, like one like direct strong connection to them.
That's where the human race originated, is in the constellation of Lyra. Do you have a specific star that was the
Yeah, big, big.
Betelgeuse? No?
No, big like VEJ
Oh, Vega.
Vega. Yeah, sorry,
Vega,
guys.
or
I didn't
yeah,
forget to translate the
v-
pronunciation in
Vega if you're a vegan. Yeah, Vega. Okay. Which that's fascinating, because that's what Carl Sagan used as the home world for the film Contact and the book Contact.
Oh,
Which maybe he knew something. Well, he knew a
maybe.
lot of shit that he didn't talk about, that he lied about too. But anyway, so Vega. All right, I didn't catch that when you were talking. That's interesting. It reminds me when we landed on the moon in 1969, and we did. I'm not going to argue that with anybody. We had all the engineering skill. I don't know what you think about that, but I'm 100%. We went to the moon. Neil Armstrong, when he stepped on the surface of the moon, said that's one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind. And people always interpreted that as, well, he made a mistake. He meant one small step for a man, meaning me, and one giant leap for mankind. But that's not what he meant. What he meant is that's one small step for us, Earthers, the human race as we understand it on the planet Earth. One small step for man, meaning the greater mankind, men and women, or man, and one giant leap for mankind, meaning all of the other humanoid races that populate this part of the galaxy. And I think in that context, his statement makes absolute sense. And he's never really elaborated on the meaning of it for him. So it's interesting too, as I look at NASA, and one of the things I've built my career on and talked about is that they've had a lot of religious aspects to what they do. There's a lot of homages to the ancient Egyptian gods, Isis, Osiris, Horus, and Set. And they were, I think, Aryan gods from some other world that came here, and something happened that changed the Earth's the year from 360 days, which is where we get the 360 degrees in a circle thing, to 365 or 364 and some change or whatever it is. And they believe in all these myths, and they would land with the stars in certain alignments above the landing site. Some of the stars being the belt stars of Orion, the star Sirius. Do you think that this is part of getting the message out? Or do you think that when they do that kind of stuff, they're just trying to make sure that they're doing it under the auspices of their gods from beyond? But yeah, I mean, I think we're heading into a period of incredible transition. I wrote a book called The Choice about it about 10 years ago. I described you the physical things that were driving it, the fact that human consciousness is controlled actually by the positions of the planets, by the spin energy that they create, and it ripples through the higher dimensions, because we live in a hyperdimensional universe, and affects our thoughts and our consciousness. And we are really about ready to break out into something new and better. And we've gotten up to this point before, and then we crash, and then we get up, and then we crash, and then we get up, and then we crash. This time we've chosen not to crash. We've chosen to go forward into the uncomfortable reality. The uncomfortable new reality is what I think. But I wanted to ask you a few questions because there is a spiritual aspect to it. And I mean, my book is about the physical, but it's about how the physical relates to the spiritual and how you can confirm so many things, so many of these crazy things that we talk about, these new age things, maybe, are actually backed by science and experiment and things that people don't understand. And so there is this life energy all around us. But I want to get your description of how you view the universe. And people talk about dimensions, and I think we understand that. Like when I talk about a hyperdimensional universe, I'm thinking of higher spatial dimensions where the physical laws, such as they are different, where we, sometimes we have physical bodies in those incarnations, and sometimes we don't. As it gets higher, I imagine you don't have a need for a physical body. But I see these things as all connected, and then we come down here to experience our lives and do things in this three-dimensional reality. So one of the things, though, that's often talked about is density. And I'd like you to explain as best you can the difference between density and a dimension. In other words, what exactly does density mean? And how are we going to experience that as things shift?
The level of, let's say, dimension is more referring as like a region in a space and time. It doesn't have to be like a physical like limitation of like a specific, again, like region, like the limited space, but like an actual physical space and time, like a region of physical space and time that is delimited, and has its main frequency is a determined frequency, altogether, it's vibrating on a very specific frequency. Well,
Right.
density will stand more for the concept of your own, let's say, vibrational frequency in terms of state of being or consciousness. Not like a specific dimension, but like your own as consciousness, personal, like vibrational frequency, So that density, depending on what level you are at, in your evolution, how many layers of that fractal consciousness, of your multidimensional consciousness, you have reintegrated in your frontal personality, in the physical personality, which is, let's say, the point of utter convergence, of all these different aspects of your consciousness altogether, so that you can have an experience, your focus, of experience, your main. I think that how many aspects you have integrated within yourself, of the higher frequency ones, or many of your multifaceted versions of yourself, determines that which density you are existing, at.
If I heard you correctly, let me rephrase it. So,
Yes, please.
in a way that well, no, I mean, I just want to rephrase it so that maybe other people can understand it if I got it right. Density you view as, okay, first of all, a dimension is there's frequencies. There's a base frequency in this third dimension.
Exactly.
Okay? And there's higher aspects. You can go higher and lower within a certain range around that.
Exactly.
Your density is where you are within that dimension in terms of your personal frequency, right? Where you are on that curve.
Exactly. And mostly because it's like more of a state of consciousness, like altogether, holistically. Because we can travel to different dimensions, and we do travel to different dimensions all the time. When you go to sleep, we're going to different dimensions. But it's one thing, dimensions, and one thing is your state of consciousness altogether, meaning how all the aspects of your multifaceted consciousness are reintegrated, into your, let's say, principal harmonic,
Hmm.
consciousness here, in
When
here.
so
Like,
when we go to sleep, do we like go out and pull pieces of different aspects of ourselves from up above there and bring them back down with us? Like in other words, do we like rejuvenate every night and come back a little bit different, wake up a little bit different every morning?
well, the reason why we have to sleep is not to gain more energy, because we are infinite energy. So energy is not less or more, right? It's just intensity depending on the frequency, meaning if it's higher or lower, and that depends on your own state of integration, your own state of, being, So the reason why we need to sleep is because we are experiencing reality in a way that is fragmented into, we have the physical and we have the spiritual. And because we haven't integrated our spiritual self back into our bodies, into our vessel, into our in our experience, as human beings, we need to balance, the two worlds. So we need to go to sleep, for an amount of time in order to maintain that balance, because we're both, but we haven't integrated them both at this in the same vessel or focus, of experience yet.
We kind of go to sleep to regenerate our spiritual selves, or not regenerate,
Right.
but reinvigorate our spiritual selves, I guess. Right? That's interesting. That's really fascinating way to look at it. I hadn't thought of that before. There's a dispute between whether
Yeah.
or not consciousness creates the universe or the universe creates consciousness. And I'm a big believer that it's consciousness that creates the physical universe that we live in. And of course,
Yes.
there's this three-dimensional universe,
100%.
and there's four-dimensional, there's five-dimensional. I don't consider time to be a dimension. Some people do. I don't really call it a dimension. To me, time, this is interesting. I'm going to ask you this. Time is the spiraling physical forward movement of everything in the universe. And if that stops, that movement stops, everything ends, the universe ends. So I want it to keep going because every atom in your body has a little electron. I mean, you're never at rest, right? So
Yeah.
I want to ask you about the nature of consciousness itself based on your experiences and what you've learned.
Yeah.
And so is it do you agree with me that it's consciousness that creates the universe and our thoughts and everything that we have in our mind?
100% it is. And we have physics to back that up, which is the double slit experiment,
Yeah.
The double slit experiment, if anybody would like to research it, it basically explains to you that consciousness is the actual factor, the element that, let's say, breaks that quantum system,
Hmm.
of probabilities into manifestation, of an actual objective reality, you know. So that's why we have the mental experiment of the Schrodinger cat, right? Because it's consciousness what really manifests, one quantum probability among the millions of infinite quantum probabilities that there might exist,
Yeah.
So it's 100% consciousness, the one that creates, reality.
If you had a singular message for the human race right now today, not the future, but right now today, what would your message to everybody be today?
Today, it will be that I encourage people to open their minds, and to question if they have been, um, let's say, if they have been following certain messages like a sheep, whether if it's coming from the media, from the government, from the agencies, I don't care who, but like whether if you have been, an actual, you've been behaving like a sheep, and believing something just because they tell you is the right thing or is the correct thing or is the actual truth, and you have feel some sort of connection and you just, believe everything that comes out of your mouth. I encourage you to become, an individual that stands out for your own freedom, your right to be to think for yourself in all matters, political or spiritual, whatever, and to say, what, I'm not going to just believe anything that comes from this person on this person or this person. I think that the truth that is going to make up my own belief system is going to come from my own, determination, my own discernment, because there are many channelers and there are many people who are telling the truth and there are many people who are telling lies. But what I want you to do is to discern, to think for yourself, because I think it's time, that we all understand that the truth is not going to come from one specific, point. We have many different truths, and they don't have to invalidate each other. There are many truths that can coexist because they're both real, right? What I'm asking you is to think for yourself, to use discernment and to open your mind, please. We've been programmed for a long time, so it's time to open your mind and think for yourself.
I agree with that. That's great. You were born at the perfect time then, because we're in the midst of what I talked about in the choice, but I now call it the global sovereignty movement, meaning everyone is being
Actually,
pushed to sovereignty, meaning I will choose my life. I'm against anything that suppresses individual choice. Therefore, I'm against all governments. I'm against taxes. I'm against all kinds of things. I believe that the soul, the human spirit, has to be free to choose their own path in one way or another. Now, if that path is destructive to others, then we will respond to you about that, right? But that's your path that you've chosen. And I believe that God, and I call him God, people like to say the universe or source or whatever. I'm just going to call it God. I don't believe that God cares about good versus evil or what we judge to be good versus evil. I believe the only thing God cares about is balance. At the end, everything has to be balanced. When the books, look, everything that we do is commerce in a sense. We make commercial agreements with people, with souls and other people. That's why the Christian cross is it's a double entry accounting ledger. That's what the cross looks like. Because what they're teaching you is the Bible is a manual of commerce and how you engage in contract with other beings and other souls in this planet. So and that you encounter, period. So the global sovereignty movement means that everybody's going to have to take more responsibility. And it's not an easy path, but I think it's the path that we've chosen, and we're just moving into it. And I can't wait to move into it. I wish we'd get over all this fighting and crap that we have to go through and just get everybody to wake up, because they think French want to be French, the Spanish want to be Spanish, Americans want to be Americans, and we were all put on this earth for a reason, to make a greater whole that complements each other. So, okay, one final question. I go through life. I believe that there's two aspects to this existence which are important, and that is that everybody has a soul purpose and a life path. Your soul purpose is what you came here to do, what you came here for. I know what mine is. I discovered it relatively late in life, past the age of 30. And my life path, I understand it. I think that's depicted basically in numerology. If you get a good numerologist, you're going to know what your life path is. I think mine sucks. Okay. I want to change it. It's not where I'm not where I want to be, and I'm tired of waiting, but I can't really change that. But I wanted to ask you, what do you think is your soul purpose? And do you know what your soul purpose and life path are? I mean, it sounds like you were talking earlier about what you're here to do. That's kind of your life path, but go ahead and tell us if you can answer those two questions.
I know that my life path and my soul purpose is deeply connected to how I got to initiate my awakening. And is that when I was a child, I was very, very obsessed, and excited about the idea of physics, as a science. And I wanted to answer, the questions to the universe, like why does the universe exist? Why do we exist? Things like that. And when I was 15 years old or 16 years old, it was that specific excitement that led me into, that made me like go down the rabbit hole, and end up discovering metaphysics and spirituality and all these different things, so it triggered my Kundalini awakening, or whatever you want to call it. And it's what made me like realize all these different things, and then in the secret space program, physics was my like the thing that I will do besides being a psychic super soldier, I was being imparted physics, I was learning that, and then I think back and I say, well, when I was, a real psychic medium, physics and metaphysics is like was our purpose, so I started like researching, like connecting the dots, of all these different things in common, and that common factor is physics or metaphysics, And then when I got contacted by by these Anunnakis, both the Aldebaranians and the blue skin giant, from Capricorn, they told me that because of the pole shift, there was something going on, with the Earth, with the magnetic, electromagnetic body of the Earth, and that my brain was ductile, and was very conductive, of that field, and that I needed to do certain psychic work with them, in order to help them, and help, the Earth in something, that I'm still discovering, and so I am receiving, intensive guidance into what it is, and I will not go very deep into this, because it's very, it's very deep, and it's a lot of things, but I know that is my sole purpose, and that is my main mission here, my main.
Okay, I'd like to thank my guest today, Marina Seren, for her thoughts and information. It was fascinating stuff.